Here's how you add music to your sequence in Adobe Premiere Pro. First, click the word Audio at the top of the screen to open the Audio workspace. Now, drag an audio clip from the Project panel to the timeline. To change the volume, click Open the Audio Track Mixer at the top. Note the controls at the bottom of the panel. You can play, stop, and even loop the playback from here. As your sequence plays, move the sliders up and down to increase or decrease the volume of each individual audio track in your sequence.
This is my story of returning home. To the land of the eternal spring. A la tierra de mis raíces.
Or, slide the master control to adjust the audio level as a whole.
Who built towering cities of limestone in verdant jungles.
Be sure to stay out of the red zone to avoid distorting your audio.
Who still thrive in cities and colonial towns and on the shores of Lake Atitlan.
It's easy to add a title to your video in Adobe Premiere Pro. Position the playhead where you want your title to appear. Click the word Graphics at the top of the screen to go to the Graphics workspace. Select the Text tool. Click anywhere in the program monitor and type your title. This will add a new text clip to your sequence. Click the Selection tool so you see a blue bounding box around your text. Now you can change the font, size, color, position, opacity, and more. At any time, you can click the Align and Transform buttons to center your title in the program monitor. Reposition the title clip to wherever you want it to appear in your sequence. Drag the ends of the clip to change the duration. Right-click either end of your title clip and choose Apply Default Transitions to add a fade-in or fade-out effect to your title.
Towering cities of limestone in verdant jungles.
Here's how you import your media into Adobe Premiere Pro. Click the word Assembly at the top of the screen to open the Assembly workspace. Click on the Media browser if it's not already visible. Now you can navigate to your media. If your clip names appear in a list like this, and you want to see what's inside the media, click the button at the bottom to switch to Thumbnail View. Slowly glide the mouse over the thumbnails to see what's inside each clip. Select the clips you want to use in your project, and then click the Ingest option here at the top. Doing this will ensure that your media files will also be copied from their current location, such as a camera card, into your project folder. You don't have to do this, but if you don't click Ingest, Premiere Pro will only link to these media files, wherever they're currently stored. And if that happens to be a camera card or an external media drive, your media will go offline when you eject the card. Finally, right-click to import the selected media files into your project. Switch to the Project panel. Anytime you're in the Project panel, you can resize the thumbnails or switch to List View. To import an image or video from Adobe Stock, open the Libraries panel. If you don't see it, select Window, Libraries to bring it into view. Search for a term in the search box. You can filter your search results as desired. When you find an asset you like, save a preview of it to your library. After the asset appears in your library, right-click it to license the asset or simply add a watermarked version to your project. Once the asset has been copied over, switch to the Project panel. If you don't see it, try clicking the double arrow to reveal it in the list. The asset will already be selected in the panel. Double-click it to open it in the Source panel, where you can play it. The timeline in Adobe Premiere Pro is where you assemble the clips that make up your video. Ensure that you're in the Editing workspace by clicking the word Editing at the top of the screen. To create a new sequence, simply drag any clip from the Project panel onto the blank Timeline panel to the right. If you already have a sequence open in the timeline, create a new one by right-clicking the clip and choosing New Sequence from Clip. The settings of your new sequence will automatically match those of the clip you start with. The sequence name will also match the clip's name, so to change it, click on the sequence and rename it. Here's a tip. If you ever drag a clip to your sequence and it appears much larger or smaller than the viewing area in the Program panel, just right-click it and choose Set to Frame Size. Now it'll match the settings of your sequence and appear correctly sized. Exporting your video from Adobe Premiere Pro is easy. Ensure that you're in the editing workspace by clicking the word Editing at the top of the screen. First, select the sequence you want to export in the Project panel. Or just make sure your sequence is active in the Timeline panel. Next, choose File, Export, Media to open the Export Settings dialog box. Premiere Pro gives you amazing control over the export process, but presets make it easy. Next to Format, choose H.264 if it's not already selected. Open the Preset drop-down menu and scroll down to YouTube 1080p HD. Click the blue output name to rename the exported file name and determine where to save it. On the Publish tab, scroll through the online destinations where you might want to upload your video automatically. You can choose Creative Cloud, Behance, Facebook, Twitter, Vimeo, and YouTube. Click the relevant checkbox to activate the desired Publish option and then click Login to log into your account. Once you complete that process, choose a privacy setting. Enter any tags you want to associate with your video and fill in a description. Finally, click Export. Here's how you add music to your sequence in Adobe Premiere Pro. First, click the word Audio at the top of the screen to open the Audio workspace. Now, drag an audio clip from the Project panel to the timeline. To change the volume, click Open the Audio Track Mixer at the top. Note the controls at the bottom of the panel. You can play, stop, and even loop the playback from here. As your sequence plays, move the sliders up and down to increase or decrease the volume of each individual audio track in your sequence.
This is my story of returning home. To the land of the eternal spring. A la tierra de mis raíces.
Or slide the master control to adjust the audio level as a whole.
Who built towering cities of limestone in verdant jungles.
Be sure to stay out of the red zone to avoid distorting your audio.
Who still thrive in cities and colonial towns and on the shores of Lake Adobe.
In Adobe InDesign, we save and work in a file called an InDesign document that has a .indd extension. But there are a lot of other file types you can save or export your work as, depending on your needs. In this video, you'll save a practice file and explore some of the different formats available when you save or export. To follow along, you can either open an InDesign file you have, or open this file from the practice files you downloaded for this tutorial by choosing File, Open. To save a file, you can choose File, Save. In this case, you'll save this file with another name, essentially making a copy, by choosing Save As. Saving a copy of a file is a great way to make a backup for yourself, or to save the state the document is currently in, so maybe you can go back to that point later, for instance. So choose File, Save As. In the Save As dialog box, you can choose a location to save the file. Make sure that InDesign document is the chosen format. Change the file name, maybe adding something like V2 for version 2. Then click Save to save the file. Now you'll find that in order for someone else to open the InDesign file you just saved, they'll need to have InDesign or Adobe InCopy on their computer. That also means that if they can open the file with InDesign, they can probably edit it. At times, you may want to just send a visual of the artwork you're creating in InDesign so someone who doesn't have InDesign can view it. You can do this by saving your document as a PDF. Anyone with a free PDF reader can then view the PDF file. So let's save this file as a PDF. Choose File, Export. In the export dialog box that opens, you can choose Adobe PDF Print as the format. You'll see other formats in this menu, like EPUB, which is typically used for electronic books or ebooks. You'll also see PDF Interactive. That's a PDF that has interactive features like buttons, links, video, and more. Or maybe HTML for a website. To save as a PDF, make sure Adobe PDF Print is chosen and click Save. In the Export Adobe PDF dialog box, you can change options depending on what you're using the PDF for, maybe to post it on a website or print it or both. You'll learn more about saving for PDF and the options in the last part of this Getting Started series called Share InDesign Projects. For now, click Export to create the PDF. Now you may see this PDF Comments panel open. If you do see it, come up to the PDF Comments tab at the top, right-click on it, and choose Close. You'll learn more about working with panels and different content in the workspace in the next video. You can close the open file in InDesign by choosing File, Close without saving if asked. Knowing how to save or export your files in Adobe InDesign also allows you to save copies of your InDesign files, maybe to create a version of the document you're working on or share your design with others for review as a PDF.
Sometimes a photo will have an unnatural-looking overall color called a color cast, which comes from the lighting under which you shoot the photo. For example, if you take a photo under fluorescent lights in an office, it may look too green overall. Or if you have a camera or a phone that shoots underwater, you may get a photo that looks too blue. Now, sometimes you might like that effect, but when the subject is something like food, it can look unappealing. So let me show you a quick method to neutralize a color cast that you don't want. Go to the Layers panel, and if your Layers panel isn't open, go up to the Windows menu at the top of the screen and choose Layers. At the bottom of the Layers panel, click the Add Adjustment Layer icon and choose Levels from the pop-up menu. That adds a Levels adjustment layer above the layer that was selected. Now, it's a good idea to get in the habit of making adjustments with adjustment layers rather than directly to a photo, because adjustment layers give you the flexibility to refine an adjustment later. When you added the Levels adjustment layer, the Properties panel probably popped out, and it contains controls for the Levels adjustment layer that we just added. Now here's the quick color correction trick. In the Properties panel, go to the eyedroppers and click on the middle eyedropper, which is the gray eyedropper. Then move into the image and click on something that you think should be neutral gray. This will neutralize the color on which you click and shift all the other colors in the scene around that neutralized color. In this case, it shifts the overall color away from blue and toward a warmer yellow-orange, which I think makes the food look more natural. If you don't get a look that you like the first time you click, try clicking in other spots, and you'll get a slightly different color every time, because the result depends on the color on which you click. This method works best when there's a gray object in the scene, but if there isn't, try clicking on something that should be black or white. If you think the change is too strong, you can always go back to the Layers panel, and with the Levels adjustment layer selected, go to the Opacity slider and drag to the left to lower the opacity of that adjustment. Now, this isn't the only color correction method in Photoshop. A Photoshop Pro would probably use a more precise and complex method using something like color curves. But this is a quick method that will often help reduce an unwanted color cast so that your photos look more like the scene you remember shooting.
It's always amazing to see how Photoshop can remove a large object or sometimes even a person from an image. One way to try removing a large object is by filling over it with a special fill command, Content Aware Fill. Let's try it on this image, where we can remove this large wooden walkway. The first step is to make a rough selection around the object you want to remove. We'll use the lasso tool, but you could use a different selection tool of your choice, keeping in mind that your selection has to include a little of the background, as you'll see. I'm going to click on the lasso tool in the Tools panel, and then move into the image and draw a selection outside the walkway. Now this is important. You have to include a small bit of the surrounding area inside the selection all the way around. Down at the bottom, I'm going to go outside the document window and all the way around and back to the beginning, and then release my finger from the mouse or trackpad to complete the selection. Now comes the main step. Go up to the Edit menu and choose Fill, and in the Fill dialog box, go to the Contents menu and choose Content Aware. Then just click OK. In just a second, the walkway is gone. Let's deselect by going to the Select menu and choosing Deselect, or using the keyboard shortcut Command+D on Mac, Control+D on Windows. What Photoshop has done is to automatically take some grass from outside of the walkway, use it to cover up the walkway, and then blend the result in with the surrounding area. It really is amazing. Now here's a bonus tip. If you see any blurry areas where the walkway was, you can try using the Clone Stamp tool to cover that area. To do that, go over to the Tools panel and select the Clone Stamp tool, and then go up to its Options bar to the Opacity slider, click there, and drag the Opacity slider to the left to lower the strength or the opacity of the Clone Stamp tool, and then click in a blank area to close that slider. Move into the image and find some grass that isn't blurry. If your brush tip is really small, press the right bracket key on the keyboard, which is near the P key on the keyboard, a couple of times to make the brush tip bigger. Then sample some of the non-blurry grass by holding down the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on Windows, so the cursor changes to this target symbol. Click to sample there, and then remove your finger from the Option key or the Alt key. Now move over the area that's a little bit blurry and click and drag to add some texture back in there. If you do like the result, go up to the File menu, choose Save As, and save your image in the Photoshop format. You'll be surprised at how big a change you can make to an image by removing large items. With only a few clicks, you have a whole new image to display or to use as a background for a new design. A fun way to add objects to an image is to use the Clone Stamp tool to copy content from one part of an image and stamp or paint it in wherever you want it. Let's try that on this image from the practice files for this tutorial, using the Clone Stamp tool to fill in some of the sparse areas of this flower arrangement with more flowers. Go to the Tools panel and select the Clone Stamp tool, which is here. Hover over the image to check your brush tip. My brush tip is very small on this large image, so I'm going to go up to the Options bar for the Clone Stamp tool and click the brush picker. And there I'll drag the size slider to the right to make my brush tip bigger. It's also a good idea to increase the hardness of this brush from its default of 0. I'm going to put it way up here. And then click in a blank area to close the brush picker. Now we're going to load the Clone Stamp tool with an object to copy, sort of like you would load a paintbrush with paint. To do that, move down to the bottom right of the image over these flowers, and then hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on Windows. Notice that the brush tip changes to a target icon. Click there, and then release your finger from the Option or Alt key, and the brush tip changes to its normal view. Now move up to an empty area so that you can see that your brush tip is now loaded with those flowers that you just sampled. Click and drag, and you're painting with the flowers. As you do, there's a small cross symbol, a source point, that's moving along with you, sampling more flowers so that you can paint with them using the Clone Stamp tool. Now that you have an idea of how this works, let's try this to fill in the flower arrangement. First, let's undo what we've painted here by pressing Command-Z on the Mac or Control-Z on a PC. And if you need to step back more steps, go up to the Edit menu and use Step Backward. Then, move over the flower arrangement and hold down the Option key or the Alt key on Windows. The cursor changes to a target, click, and release your finger from the Option or Alt key. And then move over an area where you need more flowers and start painting. And you can see that the source point is moving along with you, adding more content to this image. If you get a result that you don't like, try loading your brush with different flowers. Hold down the Option or Alt key again somewhere else and then release your finger and paint over the area that you didn't like. Go ahead and continue the same way on your own, loading your brush tip with flowers and cloning them in to fill out that flower arrangement. If you'd like to see an example, here's an example I've been working on. And here are some tips to help you as you work. As you go, try loading your clone stamp from different areas of the image so you don't get a telltale repeating pattern. And you can also change your brush size as you work to clone smaller or larger areas. Take your time and have fun with this. When you get a result that you like, go up to the File menu, choose Save As, and save your image in the Photoshop or PSD format. And don't forget to try this fun technique on your own images. One of the most magical things you can do in Photoshop is to delete unwanted spots and even objects from an image. In this video, we'll see how quick it is to do that using the Spot Healing Brush tool. If you're following along, download the practice files for this tutorial and open this image. We're going to try to clean up the model's shirt, removing these spots and dabs of paint. You'll be amazed at how well that works even on a pattern like this striped shirt. Start by zooming in for a closer view. Select the Zoom tool in the Tools panel, and then click a couple of times on the image to zoom in. If you don't see the area of the shirt that you want to work on, get the Hand tool in the Tools panel and click and drag in the image. Now let's select the Spot Healing Brush tool, which is over in the Tools panel right here. Don't confuse this tool with a related tool, the Healing Brush tool. We want the Spot Healing Brush tool. Let's start by removing a spot, like this brown spot here. When you're removing a spot, you want your brush tip to be just a little bigger than the spot. Mine's a bit small, so I'll go up to the options bar for this tool, and I'll click on the brush picker, and I'll drag the size slider over to the right. And then click in a blank area to close the brush picker. Back in the image, to remove that brown spot, I'll just click on it, and poof, it's gone. What's happened is that Photoshop copied a nearby part of the shirt without a spot and used that to cover up the spot, blending the copied content with the area around the spot. Now let's try a smaller spot. Rather than go to the options bar and try to change the brush size, you can change brush size while you're working on an image. To do that, I'll hover over a spot that I want to delete, this tiny blue spot, and then press the left bracket key on the keyboard. The left bracket key is located just to the right of the P key on most keyboards. Each time you press and release the left bracket key, the brush tip gets smaller. And if you were to press the right bracket key, the brush tip would get bigger. So now I'll click on that spot and it's gone. Try removing a few other spots, changing the brush tip on the fly using the left bracket key and the right bracket key each time. Now, spots aren't the only thing you can remove with this tool. You can remove irregular areas like this paint splotch too. To do that, just click and drag over the thing you want to remove, and it's gone. Practice those techniques, clicking on spots and dragging over irregular areas to continue removing the paint from this shirt. If you get a result you don't like, try again with a different size brush. And if you need to move to another area, select the Hand tool again and drag. Here you can see how my example looks after just a few minutes working on the shirt with the Spot Healing Brush tool. When you're done, select the Zoom tool again in the Tools panel and go up to the options bar and click the Fit Screen option to see the whole photo on the screen again. If you're happy with the result, choose File, Save As, and in the Save As dialog box, set the format to Photoshop or PSD, which is the best format for a working copy of an image, as you learned in an earlier tutorial in this series. And then click Save. Now that you know how simple it is to work with the Spot Healing Brush tool, try using it on your own images to remove everything from dust spots to small objects.